Hello, Canada. Welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Guy. Well, we've got some breaking news going down here. I took a little bit of a hiatus. There was some stuff going on. Personally, I had some stuff going on, but also there was a lot of threads going on that I was following. So it's kind of holding off, and it all happened. Trump has just announced he is tired of Canada's bullcrap, and he's bringing in big tariffs. So let's just dive right into this. I'm going to try and get through this as quickly as we possibly can. There's, like I said, there's a lot going on. This is definitely the breaking news. There hasn't been anything yet with Trump speaking on it, but we do have a letter, and of course we're going to go through a little bit of the propaganda and then straighten out a little bit of their crap that's going on. So let's just start off. We're going to go right to the actual letter. Right here. That's better. Okay, so this is right from the White House. Dear Mr. Prime Minister, it is a great honor for me to send you this letter in that it demonstrates the strength and commitment of our trading relationship and the fact that the United States of America has agreed to continue working with Canada despite Canada having financially retaliated against the United States. As you will recall, the United States imposed tariffs on Canada to deal with our nation's fentanyl crisis, which is caused in part by Canada's failure to stop the drugs from pouring into our country. Instead of working with the United States, Canada retaliated with its own tariffs. Starting August 1st, 2025, we will charge Canada a tariff of 35% on Canadian products sent into the United States, separate from all the sectoral tariffs. Goods transshipped to evade this higher tariff will be subject to that higher tariff. As you are aware, there will be no tariff if Canada or companies within your country decide to build or manufacture product within the United States. And, in fact, we will do everything possible to get approvals quickly, professionally, and routinely. In other words, in a matter of weeks, which we are seeing down there, and I keep reporting on this. When I first started talking about this 2 months ago, they had shovels in the ground, surveyors were out. They are pouring concrete, they have got the trenches dug and welding pipe. Not only are they already starting on nuclear facilities, completely revamping coal mines, cities are just, the lights are on, people are coming out of their houses, unemployment is going to be a thing of the past. Everybody is harping, especially our propaganda media, about, oh, this is only going to hurt him, and they got the big taco word out there. We're going to clarify a lot of this, just a lot of this. I'll just finish off with this letter. If for any reason you decide to raise your tariffs, then whatever the number you choose to raise them by will be added onto the 35% that we charge. Also, I must mention that the flow of fentanyl is hardly the only challenge we have with Canada, which has many tariff and non-tariff policies and trade barriers which cause unsustainable trade deficits against the United States. Now, if you're a new viewer and you haven't quite figured out this whole trade deficits, I urge you, just go back and watch previous episodes. We have completely debunked this. There has been a couple senators who have hit the floor. They have broke this completely down. Our mainstream really likes to just twist the truth or blatantly lie. By eliminating this, which we're going to get to, I'm just going to show you a newer clip of kind of a guy explaining it. This is just, it is... It's gasoline on a fire to the states. Their economy is booming. We are paying for this. So, anyways, we'll get on to it. Where was I here? In the United States, Canada charges extraordinary tariffs to our dairy farmers up to 400%, and that is even assuming our dairy farmers even have access to sell their products to the people of Canada. The trade deficit is a major threat to our economy and indeed our national security. Now, he always uses this. If it falls under national security, there is no binding contracts with outside nations that can take this to court. They will lose. All he has to do is prove that it is a national security concern. And he has been completely successful in every single court case every single country has tried to put forward. And Melanie Jolie and all the rest of them keep going, oh, we're going to fight these illegal. He has got the world by the kahunas. Now, let's dive in, and we'll just start with, propaganda. And then we'll straighten this all out and move on to some other stories. We'll start off with CTV. Propaganda number 2.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news tonight and another shot fired in the U.S.-Canada trade war. Donald Trump releasing a letter to Prime Minister Mark Carney late this evening. Let's get straight to CTV's senior political correspondent Michael Couture. And Mike, in this letter, a couple of new threats. What exactly does it say?
Yeah, Omar, President Donald Trump is accusing Canada of financially retaliating against the U.S. And so he's vowed that starting...
Accusing. Now, previous episodes, if you're a new viewer, if not, and you're a regular subscriber, you already know this. Carney purposely waited and he slipped tariffs on the United States right when they eliminated the consumer carbon tax. This was to hide to the Canadians the actual money they would be saving on their food. And he purposely, the Liberal Party, the same Liberal Party that's been in power for 10 years, did it to the lower tax brackets, which is the highest demographic population. The rich don't hurt by these tariffs. It's the majority of the people who are suffering, the ones who were suffering from the carbon tax. So already, that's a blatant lie.
On August 1st, he will impose a 35% tariff on all Canadian goods going to the U.S. Now, that's separate from the current sectoral tariffs. Trump goes on to say in that letter that if Canada raises its tariffs, quote, whatever number you choose to raise them by will be added onto the 35% that we charge, end quote. All of this comes 11 days before Canada's self-imposed deadline to make a deal with the U.S., and just one day after Trump said 50% tariffs on copper would also be applied on August 1st. And more than half of Canadian copper goes to the U.S.
We'll fight against it, period.
A defiant declaration from Canada's industry minister.
This chick is such an airhead. She's so far out of her league, man. The fact that people vote for her just makes me sick. It's brain dead. This chick is brain dead.
Minister talking about the threat of 50% tariffs on Canadian copper. While meeting the Vancouver Board of Trade, Melanie Jolie said protecting jobs remains the government's focus in this trade war.
We denounce these illegal tariffs, and we think that they're a direct attack against our workers and now on in the copper industry, and so we'll fight against them.
While the fight continues on one front, negotiations with the U.S. are ongoing. Today, the Foreign Affairs Minister said she believes a deal can get done before Canada's self-imposed deadline of July 21st.
I will say that we are still hopeful that an agreement can be achieved indeed.
But one of the people who negotiated the last trade deal with the U.S. disagrees.
I think that's, not realistic at the present moment. I don't think that we're going to be able to achieve very much of significance over the next 11 days.
Canada's former ambassador to the U.S., David McNaughton, also sits on the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. relations. He thinks the government should extend discussions until U.S. President Donald Trump softens his stance.
When some of the things that he's doing start to bite on the American economy, when inflation starts going up, when things start to slow down.
Listen to what he just said, okay? This is another lefty economist. He's got his head looking at socialism. The States is looking at a free market democracy. Freedom. Trump knows nobody, not a single country out there, can compete to businesses that are running in the States. They have some of the lowest taxes on the planet. Not only that, they have a super economy and purchasing power. They control both major demographics of the entire world: buying, surplus, barter, trade. That means they also have the ability to control negotiations. That's what Trump is doing. This man, he may know a little bit, but he sure don't know a lot. And again, we're going to debunk this right away.
I think that will be the time when we can make a fair and reasonable deal.
And a deal by July 21st seems even less likely now, with the U.S. president threatening to cripple the Canadian economy in just 3 weeks, Omar.
Michael Couture on those late-breaking developments this evening. Mike, thank you.
Now, let's roll to propaganda number 1.
Donald Trump has sent a letter to Canada threatening a new tariff rate of 35% starting August 1st. Ian Lee is an associate professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, and he joins me now to break down this letter. Thank you so much for joining us, Ian, on such short notice.
My pleasure, Chris.
Ian, let's start with your reaction to this letter. I mean, I think when you're dealing with this Trump administration, it goes without saying that you don't know what's coming. This 35% amount coming in the form of a letter, is that surprising to you?
It is. I mean, we know we've learned to expect the unexpected with him, but he has been, up until now, there's been some semblance of, I would say, some logic, because he's trying to get us, he's trying to leverage us and use to intimidate us, using the threat of tariffs to achieve some end. But he's usually expressed that end. He said, I want that digital service tax canceled or else. In this instance, now we haven't seen it. This is breaking news, as you said. So we don't know whether he has additionally tied this to some express demand, such as, for example, get rid of supply management or else I'm doing 35%.
What? Let's go back to this letter again. Take just a close look at this one more time. Did this guy read this letter? Did they read the letter in its entirety on any of the propaganda outlets? No. That's why I'm here. That's why I started this channel. Sorry, so sorry. Just the truth, just the facts. Here's the facts. Right there, at the bottom. Also, I must mention that the flow of fentanyl is hardly the only challenge we have with Canada, which has many tariff and non-tariff policies and trade barriers, which cause unsustainable trade deficits against the United States. Canada charges extraordinary tariffs to our dairy farmers up to 400%, blah, 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 blah. What is this guy talking about? Right. Propaganda. And a socialist economist. Now, I'm not saying the guy's a nitwit. I'm just saying this is what you get when you have people who live in a socialist country who studies socialist economics. They are going to give you socialist economic answers, not real answers, because he's not talking about real free trade, and obviously he has no idea how a true free market system, low tax, non-socialist democracy does business. Our economists can't even really be honest with themselves because they study Canadian economics. These were also all the people that were saying, oh, the carbon tax is great. This is a brilliant idea. 99 out of 100 of us say that this is the best way to fight climate change. And yet, the states, without imposing any single carbon tax system, was cutting their emissions at a much higher rate than pretty much all the other countries that had introduced some type of a carbon system, and almost 10 times the amount per capita than what Canada did with a carbon system. So socialist economists, and I'm going to soon show you a free market economist. Let's just keep listening to the BS.
But the larger issue, we don't yet know. He hasn't made that clear, but I'm sure we'll know probably by tomorrow morning or sometime tomorrow.
It's not in the letter.
I think the 35% will be devastating. I mean, we have about $1 trillion going across to the U.S. and American buyers, because they're buying our stuff, all of our stuff, and they will quickly pivot to look to any company coming from any other country that isn't subject to a 35% tariff. And most goods are, other than say something like copper, where there's no substitute for copper. So that's a unique situation. Most goods are substitutable. You can substitute something for something else. And so it's much easier when you're talking consumer goods and automobiles and that sort of thing to substitute. So the point that I'm making is this is devastating for Canada.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that a little bit more because, as you mentioned, we're going to have to wait for details on exactly how that 35% will apply, whether it's separate from the auto tariffs, the steel tariffs, the aluminum tariffs, the copper tariffs, what's exempted under CUSMA, which is the free trade agreement between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. But I want to break down this letter, which we've printed out here, which has a list of grievances that we've heard from the past, including the fentanyl seizures coming from Canada, which, according to the Canadian government, represents a minuscule amount of seizures at the U.S. border. And yet it is highlighted in this letter. Ian, I wonder what you make of the tone of this letter.
There's anger in that letter. Let's be very clear. He's his knickers are in a knot, to use a phrase of my late mother. He's very upset about something. That's why I think he's got an ulterior motive. I know there's great debate on this in Canada and around the world. Some people say no, he's just completely irrational and there's no rhyme or reason. I don't believe that. No. I believe he does. I don't agree with him at all. I want to make that very clear. I don't think anyone does. But I do think he's up to something. He's got an agenda. Yeah. He has an agenda, and it comes back to his sense, his perception that America is treated unfairly by allies and for that matter enemies, and they do consider China an enemy, but they consider Canada an ally, and so he's using this as a stick, as a cudgel, as a weapon to intimidate us into changing something that they don't like. I think that list starts with the USTR, United States Trade Rep, annual report to the Congress that lists the trade irritants. I'm not saying that there aren't additional trade irritants, but that list
Finally, he's actually going to state a small amount of the reality.
Been tabled in Congress literally going back to the Clinton years, which is a third of a century ago. Supply management, the Telecom Act.
Telecom Act, which as a Canadian independent journalist, I fight every day. And again, if you're a newer viewer or subscriber, previous episodes, these guys can say whatever they want. They don't get censored. They can say the Wuhan words. They can say the jab words. No problems. We can't. We're censored. Same with the States. This is Canada. It is a socialist country. The more people get that through their thick head, they'll start to be able to see through all of this bull crap and realize that, yes, maybe the orange man is not a very nice guy. And yeah, you know what? He sure in hell ain't our leader. He's got one country that he's trying to run, and in his own words, wants to make great again. And he is succeeding in doing it. Now, of course, you're from any other country in the world, you're hating yourself. You're besides yourself. You're thinking, man, I like this guy, or I didn't like this guy, and then all of a sudden he's doing all this to your country. But guess what? He's waking countries up around the world. This is the spread of freedom. He is forcing other countries to realize that if they're going to deal and they want to have true free trade, he's going to eliminate all of the socialist barriers these other countries have been using to suck America dry. And he's leveling the playing field. And you know what's going to happen? Freedom, the idea of it, is igniting. People around the world are going, wait a minute, that's not such a dumb thing. Why are we doing that? Oh, you mean I spent 25% more on my milk products, and we waste billions of gallons that get poured out the drains while monopolies buy up these quotas and slowly put independent farmers out of business while removing the rights of the everyday person to take my cow's milk, take it to the market, and sell it. And now they're trying to do it with eggs, and they're trying to do it with a whole bunch of other products. They're trying to complete the socialist takeover, all under the muse of, oh, no, this is to make sure that nobody starves. Bullshit. I'm just going to call it out as it is. This is socialism. This is the party and the people that are filthy rich that keep them in power, slowly taking control of all of the people's assets. You will own nothing and you will be happy. And again, previous episodes, even the police are talking that way on the air.
That prohibits American telecom from coming in, and more recently, the digital service tax. So this suggests to me, Chris, we've got to look for a grand bargain and say, look, what is it you want? What is your end game? Yeah. Instead of this, Mickey Mouse saying, a tariff here and a tariff there, and it just is serial tariffs.
So in other words, elbows up ain't working, is it? The socialists in our country have put us in this position by re-electing the same Liberal Party into power once again. Everybody knows what Trump wants. He says it. He says it straight out. It's in plain English. But for some reason, our media refuses to actually let the people know. And I'm actually glad that he let out just 3 of the list of things that I know of. 20. And I could go further, but these are obvious. In other words, socialist control. Corporate socialist control. The thing that made Carney a millionaire. How they're trying to take over the world. It's called the global cartel for a reason. World Economic Forum. Right, so you flee a country because you don't like the leadership, the way it's ran, the socialism, totalitarianism. You come where? You say you come to Canada. And now you're going to be run by a group that those countries sit and have a vote on? Why bother running? That's the goal. You won't have a place to run, and Trump is stopping it. And all these people are oblivious to it.
We've got to, say, look, we're willing to put all our cards on the table. Didn't say we're going to give everything away. Well, we're willing to put everything on the table, but we've got to know what your end game is, Mr. Trump. And I assume he has an end game. I don't believe that this is irrational and he has no end game. He's just doing this for fun. I don't think presidents act.
I mean, speaking to that, Ian, we've heard President Trump describe himself as a deal maker, plain and simple, that nothing is personal. He's trying to make a great deal for the United States. Quite notable in this letter, what's not mentioned is anything about the 51st state. However, I want to read you verbatim what he says in this letter of how Canada can avoid tariffs altogether. He writes that there will be no tariff in Canada or companies within your country if you decide to build or manufacture product within the United States. And in fact, we will do everything possible to get approvals quickly, professionally, and routinely. In other words, in a matter of weeks. Hard to tell exactly what he means by that, whether he wants Canadian industry.
Really? Really? These people need to go back to school. But this is propaganda. So they state the obvious and they allow the viewer to be threaded through into this.
To all of a sudden be moved to the United States. How do you interpret that line?
I do interpret it, and I've said this in somewhat slightly different form before in speaking to you and your colleagues at CBC. And I made a sharp distinction. I've always made a sharp distinction in my classes and in media interviews and so forth between manufacturing and natural resources. You can't move a mountain that's got copper or gold or oil or something in the mountain or a series of mountains. You can't move it to the United States or to another country. It is fixed in sight. Manufacturing, I'm not suggesting it's mobile. You can just pick up a factory and move it across the border. But it's more mobile in the following sense. Factories do close from time to time. Factories get closed all the time. And capitalism is mobile in the sense that capital can move across borders and say, well, we're not going to open up a new plant in Canada. We're going to open up.
Now, thanks to a fabulous subscriber, he sent me some information that I was actually dabbling on when this whole copper thing came out. It's from a different couple posts. We sell like less than 1.2% of the actual raw concentrates of copper to the United States. What they're talking about, this huge $9 billion, is finished product or processed, already in sheet form, right? That's the business. Again, it's how they word it. Yes, he wants the companies. Or start doing fair business. Real free trade. Not socialism. Real free trade. Believe it or not, he's trying to help people around the world by helping his country. That's the scariest thing to the entire globe right now. That's their biggest worry, is like, holy shit. In order for us to play fair, we have to start removing our socialist protectionist laws that are keeping all of these companies that are our supporters and keep us in power and our biggest donors and heads of unions that keep pumping the lies as we tell all of our workers, oh, Pierre's going to cut all your jobs, right? Pierre doesn't really, he's against the auto. And in the meantime, they're the ones who are bankrupting the country. They're the ones who are now watching their economic demise of our nation, but they don't care because their corporations are making money. And in the meantime, guess what? Milk cartel's still there. EV mandate is still in. Trump isn't a dummy, nor are the people around him that are giving him advice.
I'm going to wrap you up because we've got about 5 seconds left. Thank you so much.
Now, listen carefully.
Welcome back. President Trump hinting at potential trade deals last night, saying on Truth Social, we will be releasing a minimum of 7 countries having to do with trade tomorrow morning, with an additional number of countries being released in the afternoon. Joining me now is White House Senior Counsel for Trade and Manufacturing, Peter Navarro, is with me. Peter, welcome back. Great to see you.
Great to be with you, Maria.
So I know you're not going to get ahead of the boss. I know that, but you've been a central voice. Yes, you've been a central voice in shaping the America First trade policy, with the president now signaling more moves. Not necessarily what should we be expecting, because I know you're not going to get ahead of the boss, but what do you think the playing field should be looking like with regard to trade and tariffs at this point, Peter?
Well, let's always keep the big prize in mind. We got an over $1 trillion trade deficit every year, and that costs us jobs and factories. And what President Trump is doing is basically a fundamental structural reset of how the international trade works. And it's going to work now to our advantage rather than their advantage. And so what we're going to see with the tariff regime is tax cuts being paid for to the tune of billions and billions and billions of dollars. We're taking in billions already, and we're going to see, as we are seeing, trillions of dollars of new investment come here. The letters that have gone out already, 14 letters, basically set tariffs between 25 and 40%. What's interesting now is we're in a position where the president has covered over 90% of the trade deficit with a handful of countries. There's about 150 countries we're dealing with, but only about 15 of them account for well over 90% of the trade deficit. So we're in a very good place. I was listening to Kevin O'Leary earlier in your show, and the markets are absorbing this very well because they understand, as Kevin pointed out, that these are all negotiations as we move in time. I think the key thing here, and why Jay Powell is so wrong about not lowering rates, is to recognize the enormous ability of the world to absorb the tariffs. It's like Navarro's law, like the bigger screw job that we're getting from any given country, right? The more that country is able to absorb the tariffs. The more they cheat us, the more they can absorb the tariffs. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the tariffs on countries around the world. We're not seeing any inflation because basically they're eating the tariffs. And they're eating it because they cheat us. I mean, Maria, you and I have talked for years about the scope of the cheating, and it's not just China. It's Europe, it's Vietnam, it's Cambodia, it's Japan. It's all the countries that now we have some kind of significant tariffs on. And it's a national security threat.
Boom. There it is. No country can touch it because it is a national security threat.
When we keep running those big deficits because it takes away from our asset, it transfers our wealth, and it's basically a shorthand for the export of our jobs and factories and investment abroad. President Trump says, no mas, no more. Don't know what it is in French, but you get my drift.
You just heard Sergio Armati, the CEO of UBS, and
Yes.
While he's talking about a strengthening macro story, he was also talking about clarity and this need for information to understand what the price is. So I think that's why he believes some companies are not making the investments that they ought to be making right now in terms of R&D and infrastructure, et cetera. So do you think we are going to get clarity, say, by the end of the summer in terms of what countries are paying what price, what the tariffs look like? Because the uncertainty of it, he believes, and others do as well, is what's keeping some businesses from investing today.
Well, if I were a market analyst instead of working at the White House, it would be very simple for me to have clarity on all of this. I would simply look at all the different countries. I'd look at the size of the trade deficit that the U.S. runs with those countries. And I would be able to be very easily calibrate where the optimal tariff would likely land, given President Trump's insistence that we have a level playing field and that we reduce or eliminate our trade deficit for national security reasons. So I think that there's tremendous clarity right now. The president has been very clear about what the goal is and how he's going to get there. We had the initial reciprocal tariffs. We rolled back to give folks time. And now letters have gone out which calibrate more. So I think there's plenty of clarity. And by the way, I don't know what UBS is doing, but I'm seeing trillions of dollars of investment come into this country because of the tariffs.
Yeah, we talked about that as well.
Because of the tariffs.
And I just mentioned the president has brought wealth back to America. But you're right. Just when you look at the revenue generated from the tariffs, you're talking about hundreds of billions annualized as well, if you want to annualize it. But let me get your take on what President Trump is doing in terms of pressuring American companies to bring manufacturing back home. Apple is front and center. Peter, you've gone after the CEO, Tim Cook, for not moving production out of China fast enough. I want to get your take on how they're responding, but that was exactly what I thought of when President Trump talked last night about upwards of 200% tariffs on pharmaceuticals, because we learned a hard lesson during COVID when the Chinese propaganda machine came out with those tweets saying, well, maybe we won't send the pharmaceutical components to America that they need right now. Maybe they'll just get sick. We cannot rely on an adversary for something as important as pharmaceuticals. So I understand the president's thinking on that. But what about somebody like an Apple who makes phones?
Well, look, Apple is sui generis, right? We go back to 2017, 2018, and we're putting tariffs on China, and Tim Cook is coming to the White House just begging, pleading to give him more time. That was how many years ago? And so the problem is that Apple has, it's like too big to tariff in some sense, and it's used that line.
Yeah.
So the president has been very clear, and I don't think you can judge the rest of industry by Apple. So let's see what happens, but Apple's got the message now. They'll move faster. They can do it. AI, advanced manufacturing, they can do it.
Real quick, Peter, I know you wrote an op-ed on Jay Powell, and you said he's running to be the worst Fed chair of them all. Would you like to see...
Now, that's a very brief but very well-worded answer to every single I guess I can't say underlying, but open narrative pushed through in the first two clips I showed you from CTV and CBC. There are economists now that are coming out, and they're actually waking up, and they're going, actually, we totally understand now why prices are coming down and why inflation is coming down in the United States. You got to remember, this whole time since Trump got elected and this whole tariff thing started, media around the world in all of these socialist countries were all blabbing off, this is stupid, he's an idiot, their inflation's going to go through the roof and all the... No. Trump is a businessman. He's a businessman before a politician. He realizes, wait a minute, the advantages of our free market system give, if he was to be the CEO, the president, the right boss was in power, the ability to actually take the country in this day and age back to the powerhouse it was 30, 60, 80 years after they actually went to war and created the United States, when they enacted the freest nation on earth, which is what created that amazing economy and military and everything else that comes with it. Their system, because the way it's set up, and even though these tariffs are coming through their own people, are being absorbed by the deficits of the systems and the countries that have been slowly trying to crush the states. They need the United States. They have a huge consumer base. How do you cut off the hand that feeds you? You can't. So he's saying, perfect. Not only do we have the largest economy, but we actually have the controlling dollar, which everybody's trying to shut down. All the socialist nations are trying to cripple and remove the greenback. This is why, along the bottom of the screen, while this was playing, they kept saying a 10% tariff is coming to BRICS, which is a complete new dollar system created from other countries, Brazil and Russia and China and a few others, and more have been joining, trying to remove the American dollar, the greenback, from being the global trade dollar. If they can achieve that level, and this is another reason why the EU became the EU, was to, then Trump keeps saying it, obviously, openly, throwing it out there. It was designed, this group got together to crush America. They don't like the freedom. These are corporations outside. It's like having the Brits trying to take over the United States again. Canada's doing the same thing. What does Carney do? We're going to have the king come in and read a throne speech. You idiot. And any Canadian who is clapping like a seal, we got a king. If anybody thinks that a king is a great thing, you deserve to be the peasant you are. I believe nobody is born above me, like I am above nobody. It's called equality, freedom. This is the whole idea. This is the entire philosophy of the United States. This is, Trump's using all of this, and this is what makes him so formidable. He can do this, and we're going to pay for it. Now, he wrote a piece. A lot of people are talking about it. I'm going to let Corey just say it straight out. Listen carefully.
All right, let's talk about some other things. Food production, livestock, not the flying kind that I deal with. We're about to see just how much economic damage the federal government's willing to inflict upon Canadians to protect the Soviet-style supply management system. I mean, President Trump has put Canada's dairy, poultry, and egg supply management on the list, on his hit list, and citizens are going to be paying a high price to keep that system. And it's not as if Canadians aren't already paying a high price to protect the food production cartels in the country. Items like cheese, milk, butter, chicken, and eggs cost families as much as 25% more than they should because the prices are fixed through industry cartels while massive tariffs are imposed upon imported goods. It's a slap in the face to consumers who are struggling already under high grocery bills. It is literally illegal to produce or sell milk and some other products without a government-issued quota under this terrible system. If a producer makes more food than they're allotted to with their government quota, they have to dump it down the drain. They have to destroy it. They can't even give it away. People were shocked when an Ontario farmer released a video showing tens of thousands of liters of milk going down the drain in his operation. The cartels acted quickly. The video was pulled and the farmer vanished from the public eye, and he won't do interviews. He'll likely have his licenses pulled if he act up again.
Now, I'm going to explain something. There's so many liberals are out there and, how come? And I shouldn't say liberals, because really, most people are watching what a lot of these grocery stores and these great big outfits throw away, rather than donate them to Goodwill or sell it at mass discounts. It's because of the socialist system. the quota system. You cannot allow your own market to flood itself, because then nobody's going to buy your product if they can get it cheaper. When you control every aspect of it, you get waste, fraud, exuberant costs, inflation, flatlining dollar, unemployment, low wages, and all the rest of what you're seeing accelerate every day in Canada since the complete takeover of the Liberal Party. It's all of the rest of these policies backing up and now passing legislation to protect these cartels. The whole time convincing people that, oh, it's for your own good, when they're not even aware, because all they get to see is propaganda, that you could actually have a cow that you kids could learn all about animals, the whole idea of raising them, the circle of life, be able to actually sell milk, learn to make cheese and sour cream, and all of these benefits are robbed from you. And as I've stated on previous episodes, they're slowly removing the fundamental circle of what it takes for a farm to be whole. They're removing the farmer. Now you have a grower, so you don't have 20 farmers spread across 20 miles. You have 3 homes, 3 houses that are lived in by people that work for the one farmer who owns all the land and pays them a minuscule wage while they make huge profits. Because there's nobody that can actually run a farm without having the full circle of life. They're slowly ripping away at the actual identity of true freedom. This is the same thing that they're doing in cities. The rich can park their RVs in their backyards because they can afford a big, beautiful yard or a nice, big, long driveway. But the poor, no. You can't put your RV there. It's an eyesore. It's a fire hazard. Oh, you can't park that. You don't own the street. The divvy between the rich and the poor. This is the same thing. It's class warfare on a socialist level. This is just one aspect of it. It's in every part of our lives, and hardly anybody sees it. And then they learn it and think, yeah, wait a minute. I don't like Buddy's RV in his back. I can see it. I'm sitting on my patio and I'm looking at that ugly RV. Just so happens that, he saved up for 10 years to buy it. It's not the nicest RV because they don't have a lot of money, because they got a low paying jobs. All of these little dominoes all fall under the process of the lack of freedoms and the ability for free and fair trade. If a person can do a better job and produce something cheaper, of equal or better quality, at a lower price, that creates the market and the ability for all of the others around him to do better. Take that away from him. Give it to an elite group to control. Now nobody makes any money, nobody's got any freedom. And the elite, well, don't worry, they just keep the politicians they want rotating through those doors. And everybody's, oh, this is a good thing. Oh, Buddy's RV. Oh, you can't have a pool, or you can't do that. In the meantime, the rich are sitting in their gated communities. Oh, you can't have a gun. Oh, you can't do that, or you can't do that. Well, what are they doing? Oh, they got armed security. They've got 3 RVs, 6 cottages, 7 boats, 15 motorcycles. What do they care? Rules for thee, not for me. This is all part of this system. This system. This is socialism. And I love the way Corey frames it.
Greedy dairy producers would rather see food go down the drain than let citizens have a break on the price. And while Canadians are suffering from food inflation, over 7 billion liters of milk were dumped and destroyed in the 9 years between 2012.
7 billion. Let that sink in.
In 2021 to ensure the prices remain high to protect the dwindling number of dairy producers. This should be a crime. In fact, if this sort of collusion and price fixing was done by any other industry, it would be a crime. And yes, the producers are dwindling. Despite the lie propagated by supply management defenders that the system protects family farms, it does the opposite. In the 1970s, Canada had 140,000 dairy farms. Now there's fewer than 9,200. Only large operations can afford to purchase the quotas, and they've been predatorily buying them up for years. Small operations have been squeezed out. And the penalties for running afoul of the supply management policies are harsh and quickly enforced. While violent gun-running repeat offenders are released on bail regularly, an older man in Alberta who committed the crime of selling eggs without a quota had 5 RCMP cruisers show up on his doorstep, and he was jailed for days. Yeah, that's our...
Yeah. True story, people. An older guy. This is kind of his money on the side. This is how he gets ahead. This is how he can afford those extra little wee things, because he's taxed to death and you're not allowed to do anything when you're controlled by a socialist regime. All of this is what gives Trump the power. How can our system fight it? And that's what I mean by when I say he's spreading this American idea of freedom around the world. He is sparking a lot of people because they're starting to see through these sheets of lies, these curtains, and all of the propaganda. And they're starting to whoa, wait a minute. Independent media. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. It's not just one thing. We've been allowed for generations to be slowly abused as they lie and change and cheat and remove and take away rights, create a whole new charter of rights and freedoms, but now you have less rights and freedoms than you did before the charter was created. Trump's trade is actually spreading the reality of how corrupt and really unfree most of the world really is. And we're powerless. He's gonna win. And hopefully more Canadians wake up and go, you know what? That one leader who kept saying, I'm gonna make this the freest nation on earth. Maybe we should have elected that guy.
Our priorities. Now, on top of all the social and economic damage caused in Canada by the supply management system, the policies could cost the nation billions as Trump increases tariffs on Canadian goods in response to it. Team Carney went elbows down quickly enough when Trump demanded an end to the digital streaming tax. But they've dug their heels in when it comes to supply management. Indeed, even a number of cowardly Conservative MPs voted in favor of a Bloc Québécois bill entrenching protection for that policy. So if supply management is such a rotten policy, and it is, why does the government fight so hard to keep it? Well, the hint was in who sponsored that bill to protect it, the Bloc Québécois. Canada's dairy industry is disproportionately represented by Quebec. A quarter of Canada's dairy production comes from Quebec, and the quotas continue to move there. Meanwhile, prairie provinces with massive agricultural industries can't diversify further into dairy, eggs, or poultry due to the quota limitations. It's just one more way the East is screwing the West, and Canada...
Now do you get it? Corey nailed it! And he's doing it in a speed speech. And I'm going to attach the article he printed, so you can read it. Or, as always, I post everything in the description for my viewing audience, for my subscribers. Sorry, so sorry, just the truth. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. But it's even greater when it's shared. More people need to see it. They need to sit back and they need to go, whoa, wait a minute. What did he just say? Exactly what I was saying. I just broke it into a longer text so it was easier to understand. His riddle. His riddle is there. You're destroying this socialist fabric is just slowly being stitched tighter and tighter and tighter, and it's to the point where now look around, 25% of people are seeing food banks. Lowest wage separation, highest wealth gap. This is the beginnings of the end. This is what so many libertarians and conservatives were saying about this election. And the media flipped everything right over, man. Oh, God, they had to push that propaganda right to this hole. And I'm loving it because now it's gone viral. The clips of this goofball cop. Extremism. If you believe in traditional family lifestyle, you're an extremist. And in the same note, oh, well, no matter what your government does, you have to support them. Socialism. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, last couple episodes, check them out. That's why I created this channel. The propaganda, I've studied it for decades, and literally to just witness all of the history that I study coming more and more to life, being more and more boisterous and being pushed, and the acceptability and gullibility of people. Like, but how do you blame them when that's all they know? They teach it right from kindergarten all the way up. We're going to dabble onto this whole, now they're on to Alberta. They're banning bucks in Alberta. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a show on that. I'm going to show you the whole thing, the reality of it. And again, break the propaganda lies. Nobody tells the truth. If you're controlled by the CRTC, you're not going to get the truth. You're going to get propaganda. It's people like him, like me, all these other independents out there trying to just get the truth out there. Sorry, so sorry. Just the truth, just the facts. But if they don't know it, they just keep on thinking, oh, well, it's got to be true. I saw it on the CBC.
Equalization is just the easier one to spot. Things like supply management are more subtle. It's hard to say if anything will pacify Trump. He seems to be determined to carry out trade no matter what Canada does. The nation could capitulate to every demand, and Trump might still impose heavy tariffs. There's little sense, though, giving Trump low-hanging fruit to attack when he tries to leverage more from Canada on trade issues. Canada's federal government has made supply management a hill to die on, and it's done it with the participation of all parties. It's a pretty high price to pay for a small number of well-heeled dairy operations in Quebec. Oh, and I see Freedom Honey checking in there. Well, you'll have to get to the earlier part of the show for me mentioning the showdown yesterday. All right. Well,
yeah. Leave it to Corey. And in the meantime, this is the reality, what's going on. And the media, the economists, nobody's talking about it. But Michael Cooper.
Mark Carney is not being honest with Canadians about his massive deficit spending plans. Using carefully crafted language, Carney is trying to create the illusion that he has a plan to balance the budget. Take the recent speech from the throne, where Carney's government committed to balancing the operating budget within 3 years.
The government will balance its operating budget over the next 3 years by cutting waste, capping the public service.
Carney plans to hide this massive new deficit spending by making the federal budget more complicated and less transparent. He plans to create two budgets, an operating budget and a capital budget. The operating budget would cover day-to-day government spending, while the capital budget would cover so-called investment. Here's the problem. Carney's definition of capital spending is completely vague. it's not limited to actual capital spending, things like investing in infrastructure. It also includes so-called incentives that support the formation of private sector capital or which meaningfully raise private sector productivity. In other words, Carney's definition of capital spending includes government handouts, corporate welfare, no doubt to benefit liberal insiders. This elastic definition of capital spending allows Carney to balance the operating budget, not by balancing anything, but by shifting spending to the capital budget. Carney has no real plan to reduce spending, no real plan to balance the budget. Carney's real plan is to rack up more debt than Justin Trudeau while making it more difficult to track government spending. Not surprisingly, this important detail was completely left out of the speech from the throne. Let's call this for what it is. It's called budget trickery. It's called cooking the books.
It's called cooking the books. And nobody's talking about it. And this is true. This is the reality. This is the reality. So even once he's all done and they actually start to change the fundamental rules of how they can actually put forward the budget by splitting this into two pieces, he's going to be able to come out and lie honestly and say, oh, no, the budget this year is only $49 billion. It's like I said, not a problem. But our expenditures and costs and investments are $130 billion. But that's not a deficit. No. Where'd the money come from? Oh, well, we had to, sell off some more banknotes and print some more money and, give them at discount rates to all of our friends. And then we'll buy them back at a, higher rate with more of your tax dollars. This is what Trudeau did, right? Where's the media? That's right. There's hardly any out there. This is why I need you to like, share, and subscribe. I'm slowly paying attention because without Parliament, it's really hard to see exactly how he's doing it. It's kind of quiet right now for being this existential threat. The biggest threat Canada's ever been in since the World Wars. And our Parliament is shut down and Carney's on holidays. Yeah. Elbows up, everybody. Hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. Hang on to your boots there, ladies and gentlemen. Crap's starting to really heat up. Trump's choked. There's more to come from all the threads I've been reading. There's more to come. He's not done. And now that he's kind of starting to expose the fact that we did do the retaliatory tariffs, I'm hoping that we get a few more people speaking out on why they did it. Why does it only happen to the lower income Canadians? Why did it happen at the same time that he scratched off the carbon tax? All of the rest of this stuff that I figured out and hardly anybody else. In fact, there's a few things that nobody's talking about. It's all there. Anyways, guys, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Check out the graft. The CBC shirts are definitely taking off. A lot of people like them. Yeah, if you are subscribed, punch that notification bell. It not only helps me grow the channel, you won't miss any future episodes. Until the next time, you guys, you've been watching Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm Alias the Guy. Stay informed.